Good morning, everyone. Hello, and many greetings to you all. Thank you for availing your time to join me and the Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra. Can everybody hear okay? Yeah? Good? Okay. I'm talking about the Zoom people. Everybody, this morning, as usual, we are streaming our 11 o'clock meditation and teachings. So, on the theme of understanding sentient beings. So, we will start by doing the refuge prayers and for immeasurables. And then I will do this morning, we will combine the meditation and talk together. So I'll speak for a while and then pause a couple of minutes for you to reflect on what we just discussed, because the meditation should be analytical in terms of assessing and reflecting on the relevance of how we best can understand. And serene, your mind should have the one-pointed concentration to be able to not only reflect on what I said, but also make it relevant in your own lives. So I thought of using this theme of speaking for a little while and then leave you in peace and let you meditate on that. In order to make relevant on the talk, it's not just listen one-sidedly from my side talking and you just listen. Also, you're reflecting on that. Then towards the end, we will make some question and answer. So please feel free to write down the questions in the chat box, or those who are joining from Facebook and YouTube, you can type in. At least on Facebook, we should be able to access. I don't think we can access questions on YouTube. So that way we are a little bit more interactive, so that to use the session very meaningfully. So thank you very much. Today I'm here at Virupa Retreat Center, which some of you taught on the Kawula Hills, beautiful spot. We have had this place since 2001, so we had it's 21 years old center, so it's very grown up. and it has parented many retreatants, and we currently have some retreatants here, and it had number of residents, and so it has been nurtured by lots of people's kindness and generosity to keep this place going on. So I realized that I could make more consistent effort to be here at least once a month like this. For some reason, our email system didn't tell the right story. Said there wouldn't be an in-person session. I deliberately saying it will be, but the email said no, there won't be in person. It will be all only online. So, but we have sizable number of people here also anyway, but not as a result of the email, but people just happen to be here. So welcome to those who are here. So we'll do the refuge prayer and things. Thank you. Siraj has come deliberately for this. Thank you. Okay, let's do the prayers. We'll do the screen sharing for you. Join your hands at the heart. Not just make a sort of a kind of a formality, but try to make your deepest appreciation and gratitude and amazing what Dharma is in our everyday life, when we are able to practice how much a medicine it is. And so try to reaffirm that in this prayer and fullness, because people have little joy, but that joy can lose quickly in dissatisfaction. But we should, even small things we can rejoice from each other, we should remember them and always think of them fondly in that light, rather than thinking of some other clouds that appear sometimes in our deluded mind. So that's why joyfulness is very important. Joyful of quality of triple gem, and joyful of even being able to having to work with difficult sentient beings. Then only the triple gem is gem. Then the gemness can be really proven when we work with sentient beings. When we run away from sentient beings, I don't know how much of the gem is again practice. So in relevance to our topic, to today's teaching, please put those in your thoughts and express them in the deepest way as we do this prayer together. O yenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Atere Vyeda Aladama Bhavacha Adyevabhe Yenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Atere Vyeda Bhavacha Adyevandala Ashare Vadavadravya Endabu Tadama Zanga Anjare Jaladama Bhavacha Adyevandala Ashare Vadavadravya Endabu Tadama Zanga Atere Vyeda Ladama May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those near and far. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering and happiness. No suffering, Amadadva, equanimity, free from attachment and aversion, to those near and far, according to the intelligence and predisposition of it, Veda Yatanda Dharma Agrelo and Kama Virgos. So in combining the meditation and talk together, usually when you are very, very concentrated, it is already, you are fully present. There is a meditation. I'm sure most of the time when people are listening very intently, they will be in some kind of meditation. Not that kind of a one-pointed thing, but analytically listening and reflecting. So I suggest you observe all of that. But the normal 4S is still relevant. Sit in a very good posture that is still and not moving. So your not just physical stillness, but the attention that is very, very present on the topic of relevance. And then sincere motivation with altruistic motivation, that this is not just listened to or meditated just for me, your mind stream overall, because we often don't understand sentient beings. We have completely wrong assumptions of people, what we think they are, that actually we think that's what they are. The appearance and reality are very different. The appearance are usually created by our own thoughts about them. Particularly we are afflicted, we don't know we're afflicted. We don't realize our afflicted thoughts are projecting some person in your life. So that's why it's very important not to know, to become aware that is it creation of my own afflicted mind, or is it what they truly are? Often they are projection of our own mind in whatever state it happened to be. When you're very generous, you see good in the other. When you're very mean, you see the opposite. So do we really understand sentient being? Sentient beings are just a mirror. But only if our mind is clear, that we will see it as a reflection of our mind, rather than they are objects. So that's the benefit of having a really serene and sincere motivation with which you try understanding sentient beings. I've been going over this topic a few weeks already, but I will intend to go for a few more weeks because it is all about how we can best relate to each other as sentient beings, that we can best benefit ourselves and them with having refuge in the Dharma. The fact that we have refuge in the Dharma, it doesn't mean Dharma is some kind of a cap that you wear on and then you get protected by unruly sentient beings, You're the only one with a cap, so be watchful. Today I'm going to focus on the sentient being who are all in our lives, but somehow they have physically disappeared. So they could be people who actually have died. So every one of you, please think of those. I can think of my dad and mom, my sister-in-law, my very young 2-year-old sister who died, as well as one nephew who committed suicide, and I can think of, and then quite a lot of other people, So maybe each of you can maybe think of those people, those sentient beings who are no longer in a visible form, who are with us. But do we think about them deceased as much as we think about someone else that we haven't seen for 2 years? We still think of them fondly or try to contact them. Because we haven't seen him or her for 2 years doesn't mean they disappear. We still want to find out where they are and try to reconnect. But do you do that when somebody has died, say weeks or few months ago, and maybe Buddhists try to stay very connected with that person who passed away last, say, 49 days. They have to do Buddhistically, try to attend to their needs, spiritual and so on, as much as possible. But where do they go, and what do they become? Are they still our father, or are they still our or such and such? Are they not? Why not? You can't say I never had a father to people. You can say my father left or died, but where to? Did they totally disappear and nothing, or they still exist? You see that in Buddhism, people who passed away are just as important as people who are alive. And not only that, people who you don't even know at all are just as unrecognized sentient beings who are your past father or mother or sister or whoever that can be. That's really a very important Buddhist attitude. So that shows not only those who have died recently, but those who have died a long time, many generations before they are reborn. Maybe they are amidst us as our grandchildren or nephews or some neighbors or like that. It's completely possible. On again and again, had they not completed or purified their karma and affliction, they are the law of gravitation. They will fall down. They will always fall into the world in some form of rebirth. And so among all those sentient beings, we can best relate to humans and animals. These are two visible living beings. We can't say they don't exist. But those other beings, whether they are hell beings or God or demigods, are totally different things. But at least that we know the sentient beings who we loved so much, the only mother or only father or your dear wife or whatever, whoever have passed away. You still have this whole as if they're not here, but they're somewhere out there. You know, just because you lost your brother doesn't mean he doesn't exist. You know, because you haven't located him. People have a lot of missing people, but they don't mean they don't exist. They just haven't been spotted. Their well-being and your object of concern still exists, even more so because they become invisible. Because they're now on their own. They're not with you or your friends, whereas we still have the half a dozen or more friends who are still with us. But those persons who died, where did they go? What will they become? You know, what would determine their next incarnation? Will they easily leave this world thinking they have finished and they realize that death is meant that they have lost an identity and name and so on, and will they enlighteningly move on and find a new rebirth, or they're more likely to be attracted to come and visit us? So, because all believe in reincarnation, but that's contradictory. But they believe in hell. Hell is reincarnation. They believe in heaven. Heaven is reincarnation. In Buddhism, the hell being, what do you mean? Hell being is not reincarnation? Of course, the hell being is also reincarnation. So even Judeo-Christians are actually saying, what you sow, so you reap. So what are we reaping from what we sow when? So they actually believe that there must be a former self identity who must have sown be reaping that. So the reaper is either going to be in hell or in heaven. In those Judeo-Christian, that's very, very, very sad because there are only three options in rebirth. Not just physically classing them hell or heaven, but you could be human being in form, but you could be living like a deva for half a day or a couple of hours, you know, or maybe 2 hours. Most of them doesn't last that long. But then all of a sudden you become hungry ghost. You know, in that very human body, you can go through this poor me and you're craving and you don't rejoice anything you have. You still wish you have more, and that's exactly what hungry ghost is. So we might, as Gandharvas or ghost, but they could be ghost, but they could be human in their mind. They still are your father. They still are your brother. They still are the mother. They haven't given the identity of what they were. So in this way, we need to think about the sentient beings in the invisible world, and the dead are many, are living are few. So those who have left this world actually far more outnumber than those we know eventually, because all that we know has eventually died, and therefore it is said that the being who have died from this world to the next, until they find a new rebirth, becomes a sentient being called Bardo being. So they are sentient being who are called Bardo in Tibetan. Bardo means like an intermediate being. So they are like beings whose plight has not been determined as what rebirth they will get, because at least it takes good 7 days to 7 weeks. Minimum 1 week. There are two types of exceptions who doesn't need to be going through the Bardo. Those are two extremes. Extremely advanced practitioners who spiritually who knows that life itself is a dream, and therefore when they're dying, they actually did not get attached to the world. Probably they wouldn't spend very long time in that state at all. Within maybe a week, first 3 days, after that they will escape. So those are fortunate few. But still in Buddhism we don't call them they went to heaven or Java's Bay, I don't know. The Zoom is having some problem. You can't do much, yeah. So, but at least the other transmissions are happening. So where people go and don't go after here is anybody's guess. But that doesn't mean they disappeared. They disappeared. They have not the old body in which the body is definitely left behind like a snake skin, so there's definitely the snake is not in the skin. But still the consciousness or spirit of the being has moved on. So that's why the other exception is those beings who have lived a very heavy and dense and terrible negative life. They have committed lots of crimes against human beings, and those are due to their own karma. They don't even have to be born and will not belong to either of these two groups, and they will be still missing you and me and whoever their loved ones are, and they do not believe they're dead. They still continue to remain the mother and father or brother that you are, and they always would like to come back to the home, and they're not familiar with the death. They don't believe in no self. They believe in me and my and a name, and that sentient being continue to linger in that state of limbo. So just let's think about the sentient beings to each of you who have passed away. And pretend, say, these people have passed away in the recent days. And where will you be? Because these people have died from this life. Now that means it's create a big hole in your life. And what does it mean? What does some sentient beings' death, conventional death, would suggest you to think about? Did you feel loss? Did you feel more loving feeling toward the dead than you had felt when they were alive? Do you miss them? If so, why? If they were alive, what would you do that you didn't do before? What have you got to say thank you to? What have you got to say, apologize if they're alive? Is there any such things that are lingering in the mind? We know that it's to do with those sentient beings who have those sentient beings who are no longer with us, but yet are a big part of our physical life. And it's a very big Buddhist concept of being able to do something on behalf of the deceased, for the sake of the deceased, because they haven't ceased to be sentient beings. They still are sentient beings. Sentient beings, by definition, suffer, and particularly when they lost their everything. If you lost everything in a flood, it's safe, but otherwise you have lost house, your job, your shop, everything, what would you do to that friend? Like that. Now, this person who died is even worse than that. They have not only lost the everything, but they have lost also their body. So therefore, whose plight and whose well-being is your concern? Who you believe are suffering? who might be missing you, who doesn't believe they're dead, who might be wishing for a warm meal, but nobody's serving them, who might be needing to be comforted, but nobody comforted. They're treated as the dead, they're treated as non-existing. Why do we not know? Why do we not see their presence or feel their presence when they were with us only days ago? It's unbelievable they have disappeared, but they haven't disappeared from being an object of your love or gratitude. Even more, because they become invisible, your love and your fondness towards them has actually surging and increasing even more, as if you didn't have time to express your gratitude to them. Or you feel that, I haven't had time to forgive or apologize before they passed away. So these kind of all emotions, which are very, very spiritually necessary to tackle and handle, are all to do with some sentient being who are no longer with us. So maybe we can pause a few minutes here in meditation, that you try to imagine those few people in your life that if they were just right before you, and how much of their presence means to you, but yet they are not here. But is there something we meant to be doing? Or do they expect us to do something that will be really making a difference to them? If we know that, why can't we do that? And so therefore try to develop this strong, I would say, empathy and connection to someone who's lost, and they should know that we are there to send. When somebody passed away, and the sentient being who passed away become a rekindler of their love and gratitude, and they don't treat the dead as someone who's finished. They still see their consciousness are still needing to be tended to by our kindness and gratitude in much more ways than we previously felt. So let's pause here for a few minutes, during which I suggest you do an analytical meditation of how much of the sentientness of them, even though physically they are not with us, but they still exist as a part of our mind. And what are the things we can do spiritually that makes ourselves feel a little bit lifting our spirit, and by being able to thank them or send them some prayers or whatever, do we, if we were in their situation, would we not want our survivors to do some things on their behalf? The sentient beings who don't have a voice, who don't have who can't put their hands up and make you see them and then say their things, but yet they still exist in your mind stream. So let's reflect a few minutes here, sit upright and bring your whole attention and try to be connected with a few individual sentient beings in order to train our mind to become. Because in Buddhism they say there's more invisible beings than there are visible beings. So that's a reconnecting with sentient beings who have passed away physically from this world, but who are still our objects of love and gratitude and whatnot. So first reconnecting. Now the second is, if they were not only still alive, or even if they were not alive, if they are still in a spiritual world, that they have yet to sort of move on, find a new rebirth, to tell them that you have not previously managed to express how much we love or rejoice and appreciate their good kindness, goodness, not just to you and me, but to others. You realize how much they have done to others, and then on top of that, how much they have done to you. Because if they have passed away, it's possible that we didn't actually get them to say thank you in a very best way that we could have, because they passed away at a time. Most people tend to leave it at some infinite future, you know. But when they complain, they would not hesitate. They would not postpone complaining. They straight away complain without any moment waiting. But when it's to expressing gratitude, they usually delay or don't do at all. So therefore, it's Buddhist culture to help the deceased during the 49 period is not just to help them, but help ourselves to express our gratitude. Because we feel very bad that we didn't do that. So therefore, it is very important that, for instance, in my scenario of examples of those people passed away, both my mom and dad, actually, I think we had considerable time in terms of expressing them. But one person who passed away, but I didn't get to really express her my gratitude and thanks, was my sister-in-law, because she was the carer of my 95-year-old mother, and she herself, as a carer, died before they cared. So who would have expected that? And so I never got to really thank her, for instance, because she looked after my parents like none of us real children did. But yet, you know, I never had actual time to say thank you to her. So like that. So maybe you can try to think of that one or two person in your life to whom, if they were there, how you will relate to as a grateful sentient being who have passed away, but you still feel very much indebted to, and then you try to therefore see if somebody needs to be thanked, and if they are thanked, how they feel, you know, and they still are sentient. They're sentient, meaning they actually can sense that we actually feel grateful to them. Whether they can hear us audibly or not, they are spiritually very sensitive. They will know exactly what we're doing that is good for them. If we ignore them, they feel neglected. And if we don't express them, they know that we haven't expressed them for whatever reasons. So therefore, it is during that 49-day period, Buddhists do lots of prayers and rituals through 49 days. One of them is rejoicing and celebrating the good and kind things that deceased has done to our lives, so that we actually express them grateful, and then make a little promise that we will try to repay their kindness by following some of their good examples to our young and people who are maybe our filial duty case, maybe your grandchildren, or and some maybe not blood related, but still somehow you have duty to take care of, a duty of care. You try to put your effort in them because you never had time to express your gratitude to them. So with this in mind, try to connect with a sentient being towards whom we feel grateful, and then try to teach ourselves to not to forget them as non-existing, but still remember them. How we can learn to rejoicingly remember or recollect some of the goodness, and resolve to repay their kindness in a good, effective way. And this means we are able to. Because even though they're not physically there, alive, to do something, but we do in their memory to do good deeds, yeah? So therefore, we are always, when we extend our kindness and gratitude to someone, then it firstly makes ourselves feel being able to repay someone's kindness makes us feel much lighthearted and feel happy that you've been able to do that. Because, and if you didn't get to do that, you feel, oh gosh, I should have done that, and then now they're gone. But they're really gone, but they're still, they may or may not receive directly, but the benefit of it, benefit of you doing will still exist. So therefore, it is very important. It's very important that we try to do that. So we'll pause here again a few minutes for you to not only reconnect with the deceased, but try to express this sense of gratitude to the sentient beings who are in an invisible world, but still for you, they are somewhere out there and needing to say thank you to and make a little promise to do good to others in their memory. So let's pause here a few minutes for you to reflect. So now to understand the sentient being who have passed away, try to put yourself in their shoes of someone who has abruptly asked to leave, or somebody has been abruptly fired from their job. How would that person be feeling of that, having lost their job, but they have no power to keep on, but they still resent. They still want the job back, and they wanted to make every effort to get it back by hook or crook. Like that, imagine that your loved one who passed away do not believe that they have not accepted death. Most people reject death, they deny death. If possible, they bargain and they try to avoid it at all costs. Who among many who passed away would be fit to accept straight away when the death comes? Most of people, very few of them, will accept death with a great dignity. The only exception are those who are spiritually realized and therefore die in great style and deep samadhi and pass away. But there would be very few who can do that. So that means try to put ourselves in the shoes of the deceased who have just lost everything, and they don't believe they deserve to die, or they don't even know they died, but some reason everybody treat as though they don't exist. And every time they come home, then nobody talk to them, no food served for them, they are not taught kindly or whatever. And so the deceased person who have lost their physical identity actually felt neglected and ignored and forgotten, particularly those people who don't believe in existence of life after death, and which are unfortunately increasing by the day. Those people who don't believe even existence of heaven or hell are what they call atheists. don't believe in anything. Don't believe anything after death or before life. For them, this is it, and they have no way of proving its existence of past or proving the future. So they more conveniently don't believe there is any future lives. So majority of people do that because they don't realize the psychology of the dying person, and the dying person doesn't accept, because it does not accept next life. It has more danger of not accepting death, more danger of hanging on to it. So they become actually ghosts. They actually become more like a constant, repeated visitor to the very home and house, and want us to go with them, be with them in the way that they think that we are the one who's leaving them, rather than they who have died. So that's actually usually the case. Most deceased don't know they died. They think we have abandoned them, we have forgotten them, we have totally decided to give up on you, and because of that, they feel, what did I do wrong that they're treating me as I don't exist? And they feel completely ignored, ignored, avoided, and evaded, and just we always pretend that they don't exist. Now, this is the teaching on Buddhism that says that that's how the experience of the deceased sentient being in the Bardo realm feels. That's why Buddhist teaching deliberately, the family creates all these prayers and charity and good deeds in the name of the deceased, day by day, week by week, for the whole 49 days, some even more than that, in order to appease and inform and reform the deceased that they have passed away and their life was never real. It was temporary, and they should, all the things they were, the name, their address, their identity, none of this. This is just a dream. This is a dream. So we deliberately do the prayers in order to inform the deceased and guide their consciousness not to stay stuck in this world as this is real and permanent and perfect and satisfactory, when they're exactly opposite. It's impermanent, it's imperfect, it's unsatisfactory, and always changing and even dying. And so when we inform that, the deceased due to our love and kindness and maybe prayer, power of the people who do the prayer, they straight away say, maybe I'm dead. Then they look for their shadow. They touch the body, which they can't. Mentally they touch it. And they look for shadow. They couldn't see a shadow. And then they realize they're dead. But how many of them get informed and guided to know that they are deceased? And we don't say, oh, he went to heaven. And, people pretend, saying, oh, where did my mom go? She went to heaven. We're just telling blatant lies. How do we know she went to heaven? I mean, if living are confused by telling he went to heaven, and the deceased would be doubly confused by the behavior of the survivors. So instead of doing the very prayers to inform the deceased that your life and everything is impermanent, and we are not far from joining you, it's a good thing like that, and so that we too are come to realize through your death that everything is impermanent and transient, and we learn to now put our work together in order to make our inevitable preparation to leave also in a grace and dignity rather than dying with just desperation. So if we spiritually engage in that manner, then we are actually doing so as a result of their departure from our life and from their identity and so on. Because of that, then we do whatever meritorious things in their memory. All of the good deeds we do, it makes them to know, life is really, so precarious, so unreliable to hold on to. And maybe they're telling me the truth. This isn't a way to continue anymore. And then they're starting to change their mind and stop clinging to their identity and so on. And otherwise, they have no intention to leave. The spirit keep coming. The sentient being, invisible sentient being, keep appearing in whoever is in low morale in the family. They fall prey to his or her attachment. The deceased doesn't know their attachment in coming is harming the person, but the person who is a little bit vulnerable and weak in morale, they become so sad and shocked and suffer the loss. So one who's suffering, experience the loss, become much more easy to be harmed unintentionally by the deceased person, sentient beings conscious that attached to whatever they were. So therefore, usually quite a lot of families after death of somebody is followed by a lot of sadness and depression and emptiness and melancholy. And therefore, this is even considered to be necessary culture to observe the mourning period. If you observe the mourning period by wearing dark clothes and whatever, don't wash yourself or whatever, some cultures have very heavy duty demands on you how they should observe the mourning period. They think it's good for the dead, but they don't realize it's worse. That's what the Buddhist teaching says. Don't cry, don't wail, don't complain. If you do, the tears become hailstorm to the deceased. And all the dark clothes you wear and not go outside makes themselves very, very dark dungeon there. So they have exactly the same effect with them. But that's why we light lots of butter lamps. Every culture seems to light lamps, candles for us. And somebody died there. Even communists, I saw them. They light a candle and then bow down toward the coffin. What are they trying to do? There is this kind of archetypal, unexplained symbol happening that they have a need to do something, rather than observe the mournful way of saying it's such a sad, such a shock, such a big loss. But then when you talk about what a big loss it is to the deceased, we actually try to console the survivor as they suffer the loss. But seldom anybody consoles the deceased that they have lost everybody who's living. The deceased has only deceased identity, but not deceased existence. They still exist as a part of the being, but they have died. All their loved ones has died on them. So from that point of view, we have died. We have ignored them. We have forgotten them, and we have taken everything what they owned. And quite a lot of them are pretty mean anyway. They didn't want to give anything to anybody, so they have no intention to change their mind when they died, because they don't even know they died. So they have every intention to keep on, but yet they see we are ignoring them, and that if you knew that your loved one is in that state, you'd be shocked. Oh, I don't want you to think like that. No, I want to do the exact opposite. Exact opposite. So that's why all the post-death rituals and prayers and charities and good works and religious services and cultural, a lot of them are social things. We give big feast. In every culture, they give big feast in the name of the deceased. Maybe in the modern society, only one afternoon finger food. That's it. And even that also, to make it as simple as possible. Finger food means not even a real meal. In all traditional cultures, no matter how unreligious they are, they do the exact opposite. They give big feasts as much as possible to make everybody think of the deceased and bid them farewell and thank them, light a candle in their name. So when they do that, oh, why are everybody doing this? And they straight away know, oh, maybe I'm dead. And then they're starting to relate to the behavior of the survivors, because they haven't seen people behave like that. And then they're still sentient, remember? That means they can sense what we're doing. They don't need the visual eye to see. They don't need the ear to hear. Even the deaf, even the blind eyes, they can still see and know what exactly we're doing for or against them, or not at all to them. Now, just because they're not here doesn't mean they don't know we're not doing. They become 7 times even more cunningly cleverer. So, therefore, they can almost have a contaminated clairvoyance, they call. The deceased people have contaminated clairvoyance for all the wrong reasons. But if they are a relatively advanced practitioner, they're the exact opposite. They die in dignity, inspire all of us in a like unimaginable way, and we say, wow, this is how he passed away. And then we do not feel at a loss, but we feel rejoiced that he was amidst us at all. And quite a lot of time people are celebrating someone, their loved one died. They're celebrating the life, isn't it? Funeral is some kind of celebration. It's mainly making the person feel, we are not doing because they don't exist. We're doing because they are there somewhere. We can't just toss a drink to them. That's the only difference. But they still will appreciate anything you feel or see or do in a way to lighten your more sorrow or sense of loss, and you feel you've done the right kind of what do we call send-off. It was a really respectable send-off that you and your friends, everybody feel that you did send off. Send-off means you sent some sentient being somewhere. Where to? Who knows? They have earned their own. They have been planning unconsciously somewhere to go. I'm sure they will go. You wouldn't believe where your 7 children end up. You wouldn't believe, until they've left home, you didn't know where they're going to go and do it. And yet they did, because they have something's written on the forehead, we call in Buddhism, and their karma will determine where they're going to go, so long as we let them go. But letting go is very important. So some sentient beings, after they pass away, we should let go. If we let go, then the goodness of that, they feel, oh, thank goodness I'm not allowed to go. Because otherwise they feel guilty. They feel heavy energy from us. So the deceased people are only invisible, but they are just as palpable from what we do. If we let go of them out of grace and gratitude, whatever, they feel so much reconciled with us. And they don't feel they have orphaned us. They don't think that they have died and caused us big hurt and loss. But instead they feel, oh, he's so matured, he's so grown up. And then she or he is happy that all our sweat and tears bringing us up has actually served some purpose. And they feel, oh, I don't need to worry, I can really go now, because they have been communicated that way. And so sentient beings exist because, whether the God or Buddha are worshipped in front or not, but actually what we are doing is for the sentient being, isn't it? Because they're sentient being, they are still sentient being because they have still the consciousness staying on somewhere. They haven't lost you as a mother or son or wife or husband. They still think you are there. They don't think we have disappeared. We just have behaving something very odd. They say, what happened to me? He's not talking to me anymore. He's not returning my calls. So all of a sudden they notice we have changed our behavior. Now, if we change our behavior in a spiritual level, they're very sensitive. They straight away say, this is what he's doing for me. And then they feel straight away sense what we as a sentient being to them are behavior, because sentient beings are influenced by sentient beings' behavior much more than things, they are much more sensitive, spiritually speaking. So therefore it's important to know that a lot of people do not do anything to honor the deceased in a possible way, but nevertheless they suffer the loss, depression, and helplessness, and loneliness when somebody dies. And when they do that, that becomes cause of their own suffering. But if their focus is on the deceased person who has lost us, we don't suffer depression. We feel like doing help to them. So as a result of that, we become much more able to repair their kindness in a way that we didn't do in the past. So we actually are what they call participatory grief. We actually participate actively in their grief rather than it's our grief. Then we are understanding sentient beings who have died. Like the soldiers who killed, and they say, to the wife who lost her husband, who's got killed. So they don't talk about the soldier anymore. They talk about the wife who has become a widow. Sure, this is the materialistic world. This looks after the wife, but nobody looks after the soldier. Maybe he get a little burial with the little trumpets and maybe gunshot or whatever, but that's about it. But Buddhist being practices spiritual teaching, they actually think more about the plight of the soldier who killed in violence, who supposedly was going to defend the country or whatever was making him do. But how about him? Does he have a pension? Does he have a pension because he lost his life for his country? No, it's only his wife get given the pension, but he himself is treated as dead. So therefore, all spiritual practitioners in any kind of funeral situation usually try to pray in the name of God or the Buddha or Amitabha or whatever. They actually try to entrust the deceased sentient being in the hand of the God, in the hand of the holy ones, isn't it? In Buddhism, is handed to Amitabha. Amitabha says, nobody, I'll take care of him. We got plenty of spare seat up in Sukhavati. Particularly people like him, so deserving, who has someone like you praying for them. So it's Buddhists try to make each other feel comfortable, thinking that we have handed the sentient being in the hand of the Amitabha. Do you believe that? Yeah. Do you hear that all the time? Buddhist always says, pray for him. Yes, pray for him. Where to go? Where? So that he can go to Sukhavati. And they're not talking about Wonderland, They're talking about, they don't want to send him to another wandering land, They want to go send him to Sukhavati, where there's no dukkha at all. You see, the idea is perfect. The idea is very good, but who gets to go to Sukhavati when they lived like that? Now, what the hell did you do last 49 days to warrant your deceased uncle to go to Sukhavati without him having to do any good work to purify his karma and so on? But yet, we really want to make sure that we have done all the right things to the sentient being who just died, and give him in trust to the Buddhas, to the God, to Siddhigarbha. In Chinese Buddhist culture, there's 7th month is ghost month. All the ghosts come back, and they frantically do all this ritual. They burn lots of fake paper money, and so to earn this spirit to go to a place in the heaven. You can see it's all about doing things for sentient beings. So sentient being is a most important in Buddhists, and people who may not think they're Buddhists, but they still really want to do something for mom. I see lots of people. They always send me saying, "Oh, such and such passed, so I want to do something for her." They really want to make sure that something is done to the sentient being who no longer is sister or the husband anymore, but they still are in their spirit that. And they all have very strong wish and that they can do. The Buddhists would do anything if the astrologer says, do this, build this stupa, or do this, may repair the road, or whatever are prescribed according to the astrological calculation. They'll do that for the mother or the father or the son, whatever, so that they will earn a rebirth or Sukhavati, whichever is their karma choosing. So, where does all this prayer for the deceased? Prayer for the deceased is prayer for the sentient beings. Prayer for the sentient beings who don't have ability to do much on their own. They're really lost. They don't even know they're dead. They're still hungry for the body they don't have. So you can see how hallucinated they are. People are really full, thin, but still hungry. They ate already 2 plates, but still hungry. It's like that. They haven't got much room to put in the stomach, except the nails and they say every nook and crook can fill the food if there is a greed. So when the person who dies, they really want so much attention, as if they didn't have enough attention the whole life. And they become orphaned of everyone's attention, particularly when everybody treats you as a dead, that's it, and non-existing. They feel really orphaned or neglected and forgotten. So that's why the Buddhist practices of doing the 49-day prayer and a proper send-off and doing things on behalf of in the name of the deceased is a very amazing understanding of the plight of sentient beings who have died in your life. And you do not disregard them as non-existent, but they still exist in other capacities or form, and with much more spiritual emotion, attachment, connection with you than you thought they died. Also, that one that doesn't die. You can tell from your side how much of your emotion toward the deceased are still alive. And we try to suppress or hide sometimes, but actually they're just as alive. They don't, our emotional gratitude or whatever we have towards them, they don't die when they died. They come alive. They need to be nurtured and attended to. And that is they too was our emotional sentient being. Their physical body died, but their emotion hasn't died. Their love for you, their concern for you. And most of the deceased who are coming back are returning not because of ill will, because of their attachment, their love, their concern for you. Even though it might be harming us by their keep returning as a ghost, but they don't know they are. They are deliberately coming to help. They really want to still be there for us, what they thought was never enough what they did. Because their attachment is so strong, they don't even know it's holding them back and also harming us in some ways. So if we are also attached to sentient beings and they still are there, then these could harm mutually. The sentient beings don't understand each other's attachment is attachment, and they don't know attachment and love are very, very similar but very dissimilar. So therefore, when we think we love some sentient beings, but actually we are attached to them, we're possessive of them. They don't need to be possessed. They need to be set free. If we really love them, let them go wherever they need to go, when they need to go, as they have already gone. Can't you tell she's not there? Can't you tell they have gone? But some people, no, they don't want to accept they have. They don't. And few people who live long, most survivors don't have any intention to hold them back because they did a really good inning. Others who die young, just imagine if you lose your 12-year-old son or daughter, like Gampopa. And they couldn't accept the fact that how could such a young child die, who barely not have done anything, who had so much going for, but not allowed to live. Yet some sentient beings are born with such short life. Whose fault is that? Is the parents' fault? No. It's the sentient being themselves have done some things in the past life that harmed and interrupted, killed an insect or whatever, either intentionally or accidentally, that too have caused conditions that can end oneself to be dying or not enjoying good health. So sentient beings are not able to tell what is cause of their short life. Yet we had the karmic emotion connection to suffer the loss and had the karma to suffer as a parent or a mother in particularly who carried the baby 9 months, fed, clothed, washed thousands of times, and all she can see is a dead body when it turns 12. And it is due to one sentient being's death that the mother's life could be cursed. So it's the plight of sentient beings that sentient beings suffer. So all our sufferings are to do with other sentient beings whose happiness or health or friendship or success are not going as much as we want them due to the force of their own karma or whatever condition they are. Yet we have no say. No matter how much wealth you have, no matter what you want to do, you could do nothing to save the child. That helplessness of a parent or someone losing a young shows that how much of that mother who lost her 12-year-old will suffer the rest of her future years. Why? Because she lost a sentient being who she thought was her child for the rest of her life. And no wonder why there are so many depressed sentient beings. Most aren't coping the loss of such sentient beings. Now the opposite, the sentient beings who died have lost us, not just a 12-year-old. For 50-year-old father, 52-year mother, and so many aunties, uncles, brothers, sisters, they lost all of them. So just imagine, the 12-year-old is now very depressed. He's in his shoes, he lost all of us. So therefore, try to understand that all the sufferings people have, if somebody is not quite behaving the way you like or they're reacting, it's not because of you they are doing this. It's because they have so much suffering of loss and despair and anger and resentment to do with other sentient beings, that they couldn't learn to negotiate that. Because of that, they don't know what they're behaving that looks very aversive or hostile or unfriendly towards you. They don't even know it looks unfriendly to you because they are like a limping deer has been injured. They've been injured for a long time. No wonder why they walk like that, because they have so much despair and sadness and grief that most sentient beings don't know how to overcome it. They carry that as a well-earned reason to stay angry. Poor thing. Sentient beings, we don't understand. We think they are being uncooperative to us when they have a lot more grief. They're on their own and they're not up to it before they can do anything impressive to us. They're basically injured on many levels, poor thing. So therefore, we have to understand sentient beings, their behavior. If they're not cooperative, they cannot do things where you like. Don't misunderstand them. Empathize them. What must be going through their personal life, their relationship, their career, their actual families, and their health. What must they have been going through that they could not be in the good space they sometimes are? And then don't personalize this, they are doing this to me, but try to understand them, what kind of heavy, dense and tense karma ripening in their present life situation that they don't even know how they're manifesting to others, quite contrary to their usual good self. Then we have the power to shield ourselves, thinking they're doing this to me, but rather they don't even know they're doing that to themselves. Now the deceased people is even worse. But living people actually looks like living, but they're just as deceased. Only thing is they're still eating dal bhat, they're still eating chapatis, but otherwise they're just as among the deceased. There's not much happening up there. It's all in the clouds, in the confusion, in the sadness, in the despair. They're almost like hungry ghosts hiding inside human body. There's a lot of them. And that's why, according to Buddhist teaching, we could go from our mind from one mode to another mode of sentient beings, animal instincts of fear, insecurity. The fear and insecurity animal sentient being. You know, I'm great, I have everything, I have everything, life is all about to enjoy. This is Deva mentality, sentient being. And always jealous of someone, never rejoicing what one has, even though one got plentiful, is the demigod mentality, sentient being of demigod mentality. Angry over smallest issue, and that's burning with resentment and bitterness, is hell. So therefore we need to understand, from human behavior we can understand, it's not what they're doing, it's what they don't know they're doing that has repercussion to themselves as well as to others. So in this way we need to understand the plight of sentient beings. When we understand sentient beings, we find all worthy of compassion. And that's why if there are sufferings, if there is problems, and we just have to step aside and blink our eyes, not look, it is them that's the problem. It's our duty to solve their problem, dispense compassion acts to relieve their sorrow, and not over-personalize them with their suffering, but rather to see what we can do to relieve their sufferings, whether they are living or deceased or whatever the case might be. The sentient beings usually are very, very difficult to fathom. Like Nagarjuna says, sentient beings are like a mango, It looks ripe outside, but inside raw. Otherwise, sometimes it's outside raw, inside very ripe. Some outside very raw, and inside just as raw. Some outside very ripe, inside even more ripe. So this kind of majority of people don't know sentient beings. They're only reading the outer appearance. They don't know what really are they going through. So sometimes we feel they died, but they look like they're dead, but their spirit is just as much as they are with you as they were in real life. And we don't want to keep thinking like that because some people have died all the time, but there is a period during which you must honor that they are around. They still haven't moved on. And that is maximum 49 days. That they have, they will necessarily need some considerable help and right behavior from our side that will really determine where they will go thereafter. Because due to the mutual karmic influence that we have through them, they have towards us. And so all the good deeds we do in their name and memory makes them to, shorten the duration of their suffering, and therefore more likely to depart, and then really feel like as if you no longer have the big burden of commitment, responsibility that you otherwise feel. Quite a lot of people, they don't know why. Even years after somebody died, they still feel so tense and they still are mourning. They haven't recovered. And in the meantime, they didn't do anything that is actually prescribed in their religious or cultural teachings. They haven't done anything because person become very materialistic. But yet spiritually, they've become so lost, they don't know what to do. And they're not even thinking they should do anything. And so therefore, we don't understand the sentient beings, particularly those who die. We don't even understand those who live with. Because we don't talk to them, we don't understand each other, we misunderstand each other most of the time. And how would we understand the deceased? Because we don't even know how to communicate to them. But in prayer and deep meditation, you will know what are the real good things the teaching says we should do in the memory, are the obvious thing that they call active participatory grief. Participatory grief purifies the mourning period, not in a sad, poor me, but I miss them, but it's the deceased who should be not forgotten, who should be rejoiced, thanked, apologize, and help them to move on. If we do that, we understand what's like to be dead, and not forgiven, not understood, not seen, not heard, and not forgiven, not rejoiced. And none of them will please the deceased. And if we know and think like that, and do appropriate things, then we understand sentient beings who have died. So this means that how can we start living from now onwards, not knowing how our own life will continue, which is anybody's guess, really. You have no idea how many people will die, will not be among your life, and so therefore most people die unexpectedly in places and spaces in a manner in which they never conceived. So if you understand deceased person's death, we should also understand would-be deceased person's death. And we are would-be deceased. We are would-be deceased sentient being. And if we start living, and we might even die consciously, and do few things before death consciously, so that it doesn't become an undone, unfinished affairs that become so much difficult for others to handle or need to handle, because most people don't even know what the hell all these things is about. They don't want to go through the paperwork. They don't want to go through the complex things at all. They really wish somebody else can take care. And because most sentient beings don't know how short they will live. They actually think they live for long, and they end up keeping and saving so much they don't ever use. And if that's what a lot of past deceased people do, and there's every likelihood of present people will do the same. And if they did that, all the sweat and tear and karma that they created are going with the consciousness, are not lived with things. And so, what kind of merit the person will have to purify all the heavy, dense and energy of that? And that's why survivor relatives, friends, do all the necessary things by understanding the plight of the sentient beings, and try to ease the burden all from the karma by doing good with the things they did. Yeah, and then karma is a very sort of collective and shared. Some are shared karma, some are shared karma. And because karma is not independent, karma is dependent, dependent on each other. So because of that, if we understand these people's karma of death and death, whatever legacy they have left, we have good reason to share that in the best possible way, as if we have fully represented them, even better than they themselves could have done. So with this in mind, So with this in mind, we have today's topic here, but I'm quite happy to take some questions. Please feel free to. Sorry, people on Zoom, I realized there were a few glitches, but we are all here. So feel free to type questions if you have, or unmute yourself and put your hands up, because we should be audible if there is a sentient being listening to you. Welcome.
I wondered about the period of the 49 days in terms of, it seems maybe still worthwhile meditating and releasing beyond the 49 days, say for a mother and father, if there's unfinished business, one feels, that it can still have merit?
I would think so, but we Tibetans do like after 49 days, they usually finish all the formal rituals which are required, but they always do us the first anniversary of their passing as the final thing, which is a celebrating that due to the kind of a prudent effort of yourself, doing all the prayers for 49 days, the deceased would have earned the merit to find a rebirth within that period. So the first anniversary is well over time even to gestation period for a human being to be born. So the first anniversary is celebrated to mark that. If the people, if the children or loved ones feel they need to do in memory of the mother again and again, fondly, annually, like people go to cemeteries and put flowers on the headstone, I think these things are quite good thing to do, because people always remember fondly and so on. But the only thing in Buddhism is we don't have headstones, because there's no head. and there are no Buddhist sort of cemeteries where there are headstones. But strangely speaking, Chinese Buddhists and Vietnamese Buddhists have broken this tradition of putting headstones. So like I've been contacted in early 90s by Gangalan Cemetery Authority when they were creating the cemetery, saying, do you guys as a Buddhist need a site the way they can allocate and do things? I said, look, we usually don't bury anybody because there's no body to bury, and they usually cremate it, and then the ashes are really made into bone or ashes or any remains are made into, pulverize them, and then make part of stupas, and then consecrate it and put somewhere there. But we usually don't have headstones. So in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, after the first year, unless they are spiritually realized masters, then we celebrate their spiritual anniversaries. Then we like the Anma Parinirvana, we celebrate that. But ordinary people, we never celebrate the anniversaries because that's the way the Buddhists do. But we live in a very colorful mixture world where the tradition of visiting the cemeteries to remember relatives and doing that thing is as kind of a honorable thing to do. So I think that culture is not against, I think, Buddhist belief, because the deceased should be always remembered. In Chinese and Vietnamese Buddhists, they have a whole, if you look at one side of the Buddha, is all the Buddhas and disciples, arhats. Another side, all the deceased people's photos. Whole shrine is ancestral shrine is created in Chinese and Mayan Buddhist. But otherwise there's no ongoing rituals. But they usually say that whatever you need to do, it should be done within the first year. And they usually make statues or tankas or whatever is prescribed for the easing, for enhancing the quick rebirth of the person. They have to do that within that first year. So after that, it's a kind of a additional thing, but usually don't. Traditionally, the Buddhists don't do much after that. Chat box. Okay, there is a tendency in modern times. This is from Phil. There is a tendency in modern times not to have a funeral service, sometimes to have a paperwork and effort. Can a funeral service help relatives come to terms with the death of the loved ones? I think it does. I think whether however brief the funeral service is, it usually invites all the close relatives and friends of the deceased, and they all tend to try to remember the person's contribution in everyone's life, and then try to share those memories. These days, some people show the photographs and things like that on top of the actual shared stories. I think this has a very therapeutic value for those who learn to let go and grieve and thank and close the chapter. Even for those who are not really spiritual-minded people, just because they manage to participate in the funeral, they really feel as if they have done some service in memory of the deceased in the best possible they can. Whereas there are some people deliberately avoid the funerals of somebody for whatever reasons, and they actually have a very unfinished business. They're either resentment because they don't want to face some people at the funeral or relatives or whatever, and they usually have this unfinished kind of energy carrying on because they didn't do the right thing. They think it's their whatever, but as a result of they stayed crook. But those who went there, say goodbye or thank you or whatever, they really felt so good after going there. They did the right thing with everyone. So they definitely seem to have a really social kind of therapy by doing funerals. And those who don't usually have a big issue that they can't let go in their mind. So definitely, some people may not participate in the social funeral, but they actually do their own thing privately as a way to say farewell to the deceased. As long as they do that, I think that might be necessary, because some people aren't very social, particularly if you really see people in the funeral that you least expect to see. You actually wish them dead, but they're still alive. Sorry about that. There's lots of people still hating each other alive, and they don't want to come and bump into them. and those they wish to be dead are still alive. They wish they're alive, they're still dead. So people can never be happy. Yeah.
So there's many Bardo beings. So within a family unit, a Bardo being could become attached to that family unit. But is it also, I would say, possible for Bardo beings to be attached to any random person?
Yeah, good point. I'll come to you, and Paul's question was, can Bardo being could be attached to any random person? It is true, yeah. If a people who have a very low morale, who are a little bit not quite right in their mentality and negative and very hostile, they could attract very hostile Bardo beings, because they could not get access to their immediate people who they might be angry to for their whatever their goodness or whatever. They can't harm them, or they couldn't get their attention. But they could randomly possess and follow and possess those people who are very negative and hostile. So that's why we talk about the people being possessed by either living being spirit, ill will of somebody, malice. If you know somebody's, maligning against you, some people wouldn't mind, I feel sorry for him, I wish I could do something. And you, instead of feeling angry at them, you feel compassion to them. So that person maligning you wouldn't harm you. But if you know that that person maligning against you, and you also think, wow, how dare they do that when I've done nothing wrong, then they become completely mangled up in the emotional kind of that. But some deceased people's ill will or whatever towards somebody, they couldn't find anyone to do that. But those who are very weak and not so positive, not so kind, and very, very doubtful, very, very restless, and they could attract such spirits, spirit possession, energy influences. So that's why we deliberately, like we were doing the Green Tara Puja, there's a section in the puja we were dedicating the Dharma to the spirits. Yeah, so if we dedicate those prayers to the spirits, then those spirits who are randomly trying to come to us, they will be appeased, and they will be calmed, and you will not be harmed, because you are doing so the existence of such misunderstood Bardo beings and lost souls, and you are doing this out of real compassion for the infinite sentient beings who are suffering in general, and particularly those in the Bardo realm, and particularly those Bardo realm beings who doesn't get a prayer said in their memory. So every Buddhist ritual has, like we were doing sur, you do the sur, you also include the deceased and all the Bardo beings. And with the Green Tara Puja, you offer the Dharma prayer to the Green Tara, and then the Dharma protectors, and then to the local spirits. All of this is so that randomly you do not get followed or harmed by them, but instead you as a practitioner can appease them and pacify their sorrows. There are some deceased people's spirit. I know from my story of my teacher, it said that the one family who has lost a son, a 30-year-old son, whose spirit has been, seeking help, from anyone. But for some reason, the family spent lots of money in his memory, because he was a monk. But he died very young. He didn't quite got to do very many spiritual things. And the family got really worried. They did all the 49-day rituals. They did stupa. Even then, the spirit came home. One day it possessed one of the sisters. and the sister complete talk in tongues in his accent, in his voice. And they could tell it's him. He says it's him. He says, I want to take my sister with me unless you do this and this for me. And he says, offer the white horse to Choedak Rinpoche and such. He's basically blackmailing them. He says, you do these things, family was do these things, and offer to Choedak Rinpoche. His prayer helped me, he says. His prayer helped me. Otherwise, I'm not happy. You know what happened? The family did all the above. All his demands. They sold the white horse, and they took the money, and then the spirit let her go. So some are returning exactly like the family with some kind of vengeance, you know. Others, they will, even in the family, he doesn't have particularly something to do with the sister, but she happened to be one least fortunate, you know. Likewise, we could attract some random spirit to harm us if we are very negative and we are suspicious or anything like that. We could be easily followed and possessed. So we'd have to therefore take a refuge, do the practices, send loving kindness to all sentient beings who are less fortunate than we are, and all the Bardo beings in particular who doesn't get a prayer. All this, you know, all the soldiers who get killed in war, who says prayer to them? Nobody does that, you know. And all those get killed in accident and all kinds of natural disasters. They get hundreds of them killed, and nobody says prayer. They just get mass grave. They push a bulldozer. They all like during COVID, and the people dying like that. So we should always do the prayers for less, voiceless sentient beings who are always the deceased, and others who are even more sort of vulnerable and weak, spiritually speaking. So that's why doing the prayer for the deceased is very important. And have a question? Go ahead.
I think you mentioned today, Rinpoche, early in your talk, that people who are enlightened beings tend to pass very quickly from the living to the dead rather than spending very long in the Bardo stage, whereas other people may spend a longer time in the Bardo. With someone like Choedak Rinpoche, I remember you telling us once how when he died, he moved into a prolonged state of meditation, and no doubt there was a lot of celebration probably in the 49-day period afterward, but how does his type of death relate to what we've been speaking about today?
Thanks. And that is exactly what I'm saying. The exceptional ones who die in a very great spiritual meditation, their death is not a death, but they're rather like a deliberate meditation of emptiness. So they stay in that meditative stance, meditative trance, what we call Tugdam, which is post-death meditation of Dharmakaya. You're recognizing the true nature of your mother, clear light, by the virtue of your child, clear light practice that you've been doing all life, and then when you reach the freedom from the corporal body and the name and conventionality, you become completely fused into this infinite pool of light, and then you don't leave the body and stay in that in order to inspire the devotees, so that their passing is not passing, but they're actually immortalized due to their. So whether some teachers or practitioners go for days and days, like in his seminars, it's like 16 days, and his body showed no sign of decomposition or any of the signs that any dead body will show any sign of or decay, and then none of that. But instead, people can see amazing signs of the brightness of the radiance, of the lustrous and gentle kind, irradiating face and a persona, and then see all the spectacles, the rainbow, or whatever other phenomena many devotees experience. Some people smell, some smell perfume, some people see spectacles, so all these things are not sign of him staying in Bardo. He's a sign of a sign that he will not go to Bardo at all, but go straight in the higher stage of consciousness. Okay, so we have another point from Phil. Do you have to wait 3 days after death before doing sur? Yeah, usually they wait 3 days because assuming that the deceased hasn't left the body yet, But most deceased, I don't think after they have the actual death, there will be pretty much consciousness be left very soon. But good practitioners, average good practitioners, most likely to stay at least 3 days. But even then, they may not realize clear light of death, but still, it will be too early to do the Pardo prayer if the 3 days has not elapsed. So usually that is the traditional Tibetan practice of not doing sur until 3 days has passed, and then and they will be doing other rituals before that, like pawa and all of that. Yeah, so there is that tradition, but in the modern world where deceased body are quickly whisked away, the chances of body not being moved and consciousness still staying in the body is probably less likely. But those exceptional cases like his amateur, they actually, you can feel they haven't died. The body and their persona and her presence has come even more enlivened than before. Even though medically they may be dead, but there is many signs to indicate otherwise. So that's why you don't do any sur or any prayer for someone who in that state at all. We don't do any sur for deceased high lamas, practitioners. We do other things like honoring their remains as remains of the relics. We have their special rituals to honor their body rather than feeding them as a ghost. Yeah, so different rituals. Thank you, everyone. I think that will probably do. Thank you for all of your attention, questions, and we will now conclude here. Those people who we have thought about as who have deceased, may their consciousness be more informed, to know that life was but no longer real, and may they realize that and then move on as a next port of call due to the merit of our prayer and their goodness, so that the sentient beings chapter of whatever they were is closed, so that we do not grasp on them as an objects of either attachment or whatever, rather rejoicingly carry their legacy and fulfill their wishes in the best as we can. So with this we do the dedication of marriage. Thank you, everybody. Da deva menzanga omnes me ale verada bevram di oceana bata desina de herenda mayana de vadeva mereda havagra mehobe kazdalavaza toda mayana de courage manjushrene Asama draba dradelaiva following our example. I shall de mere Salam Bodhi Jida Teba Erhana Yadanza Where has been bo Maya Dengri Freele Vedadi Generation. Thank you very much, everyone. See you later. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.